Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Anthony, and welcome back to Let Me Be Frank, episode 61. So, you may have noticed there's no intro music at the beginning of this episode. There's no sponsored ad because I want to take a moment to honor someone who unfortunately has passed away very recently. Her name is Nicole Danick. If the last name's a little familiar, Carly Danick, her daughter, was a guest on the show last season, and I'm also good friends with her sister, Chrissy. I would like to personally say to them and to loved ones in Nicole's life that I'm so sorry for the loss that you guys have endured. And in honor of Nicole, the show is making a $100 donation to the Diamore Cancer Center at Bay State Hospital. Also, if you yourself would like to honor Nicole Danick in any way, you can donate to them or you can donate blood. And today's episode is going to be in honor and in memory of Nicole Danick. So, moving on to today's episode. So, first off, it's going to be a completely different segment that I haven't done yet before. And these two special guests kind of inspired this idea. So, it's this new segment that I'm thinking about. It's called Third Wheel. So, if you know me personally, you know that most of my close friends are usually like in a relationship or engaged or married, and I usually end up being the single one that ends up hanging out with the couple. It's happened so many times. So when I had a couple reach out to me about being guests on the show and wanting to talk about their love story, that name came to mind soon after that. Oh, it's like I'm a third wheel in this type of thing. And it's just very different. Normally, guests that I interview, they talk about stuff going on in their life or certain projects that they're working on. This is really about Alana and Ian's relationship and things that they've learned and some highs and some lows. So this is going to actually become a new segment going forward called Third Wheel, where I talk to various couples. Alana and Ian were so cool to talk to. I had met them through Jennifer Herrera, who's a producer of the show now, and she was a guest on the show talking about Reiki energy. And it was like I knew these people for years, which is always awesome to meet someone new. And then it's like you just knew them for so long. It was really cool talking to them, and I can't wait for you guys to see how that whole conversation went and to maybe learn something from the battles that they've had to overcome within their long distance relationship. Well, long distance at first, not anymore. So yeah, without further ado, let's go to Alana and Ian. Enjoy. Hey, Alana and Ian, how's it going?
Doing good.
Hey Frank, how are you?
Good. Just finished. Had to do the grocery shopping. It's the weekend and stuff. And I know you guys had a busy schedule today too. So I want to thank you guys so much for making some time to be on the show today.
Of course.
Yeah, we're super grateful to be here, and we get the grocery shopping. We have such a big family that it's a big deal to grocery shop around here.
Yeah, I mean, you should see us leaving Costco with a whole car full of it.
Oh, I bet. I was gonna say just me and my roommate today was $200. I can't imagine.
Yeah, keep it when you have a big family, you got to have a big grocery budget.
I, I bet. So this episode is going to be a little bit different than the normal ones, because you guys really wanted to talk about your love story specifically, and so we're going to just get right into that. And I'll just start off by asking, yeah, how did you guys meet?
Sure. I mean, that's a good question, and it's also fascinating because it of the way that it transpired was so interesting for both of us as well. So, I was going through a divorce, and Elena had just kind of finished or wrapped up a divorce. And at the time, I was living in New York, and she was living in Southern Utah. I'd I've been in New York for 17 years, but my roots are in Southern Utah, so my family was still there. And my mother met Elena, and through that connection, actually introduced Elena and I together.
Wow.
So a long distance mother-led matchmaking session, which was interesting.
Well, and it gets even more interesting because my ex-husband also grew up in his hometown, and we had been living in Albuquerque, and he said, "Let's move back to my hometown." And then things didn't work out. We got divorced. So it was almost like my ex-husband led me to my now husband, which is a really interesting connection as well.
I always say, yeah, everything happens for a reason. It's funny how life works that way.
No,
Absolutely.
it's really true, and the interesting thing about the beginning of our relationship, at least for me, and then you can tell your point of view. So I was not looking for a relationship, of course, because I was just going through divorce and needing time. I felt like I needed quite a bit of time actually to heal and to just get through that. My mom was a little insistent. She was worried about me. Had my best interests at heart. And when we were together at my sister's in Atlanta, she brought Elena up and showed me her social media, showed me her Instagram, showed me Facebook.
I had no idea this was going on, by the way.
And she kept telling me, she's the nicest girl. You just need some friends. She just went through divorce. Maybe she can help. And I went back to New York, and I think it was 2 weeks later, my mom texted me and said, actually, she's in New York right now. Can you just take her to coffee? Elena had traveled to New York for a business trip. And I ended up texting Elena as she was leaving town, but we made that connection. And I would say that right when we were first starting to text, it really felt great. It felt perfect, actually. We hit it off immediately right away. So you were saying earlier about how life works out for a reason. I think that that is true. And if we're open to new opportunities, new relationships, finding and meeting new people, that can be great.
So my perspective on that was, so I was raising my 3 children as a single mom, in Utah, and I was working for my mother at the time, as a director of sales and marketing for her travel company. And so I would travel to New York, actually to Secaucus, not to New York. Secaucus definitely doesn't sound as fun as New York City. So I traveled in and I had an extra day while I was there. So I took this like crappy bus into the city, went around, did all the things that I thought were really cool that I didn't get to do in Utah. And so I took some really cool photos and I posted them on my Facebook. So that's when his mom saw that I was in New York and she actually texted me before she reached out, or no, she probably reached out to you first, but she texted me and she said, "Oh my gosh, I just want to let you know you're in the city where my son lives. Can I please give him your phone number?" And so I paused for a minute and I started because he comes from a large family. So I was like, which son is it? So I started scrolling through her Facebook and then I saw him and I was like, oh my gosh, he's the cutest of all the sons.
I was just gonna say, not the ugliest one, not the ugly.
And they're a very attractive family, but personally, I did find him to be the cutest, and so I said, "Absolutely, please, give him my number." And so I was leaving, and he texted me from the Newark airport, or you were flying back from Vegas.
I just gotten home, yeah.
Yeah, and I was flying
Back to
back to
Vegas.
Vegas because that's the closest airport to the small town in Southern Utah. And, he texted me, and it was the weirdest thing. So, I know you know a little bit about energy work from speaking to Jennifer, but, when he texted me, the first text, I felt like this really weird sensation in my body that had never happened before. Um, and I was like, "Wow, this is someone I think I really wanna connect with." So I flew home and we just started talking all the time. We were FaceTiming every night. I was in my early 30s at the time, and we were like staying up late like teenagers. So we would be FaceTiming until 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd be getting up with my little kids the next morning, like exhausted. And it was just really, really cool. And so I told him, well, this seems pretty awesome, pretty legit. Hopefully you'll be able to come out and meet me in person. And so you can talk about Shay's wedding, I guess.
Oh, I just want to mention quick too, because I don't remember if you guys, do you guys say how long you two have been together?
I've been in New York 6 years this August, but we met about 7 years
Yeah,
ago.
7 years.
Wow. And you both, and ironically too, you both have 3 children each, right?
Yeah, that's true. And two sets of twins.
Wow, both of you.
Yeah,
Yes.
we've got 17-year-olds, almost 15-year-old, two 11-year-olds, and an 8-year-old.
That's crazy. Like, what are the odds of that?
We're called the Brady Bunch often, but it almost is like that. So we've got the kids. My biological kids are the older kids, and then hers are the younger kids. But we just kind of everybody's together. We just say the children, the older kids, younger kids. Exactly.
But sorry, yeah, you guys were mentioning a wedding.
Yeah. So I maybe to keep going, it is interesting when you're in a situation when your a relationship is ending, right? Divorce can always I don't know that it always leads to difficulties, but at least for me, I was coming out of a relationship that had gotten unhealthy, and then it was this kind of slow dissolution of the family and the relationship, and that can be very challenging, a very hard place to be in. And I remember when first meeting with Elena and texting you really early on, it was the small things that were so important. We connected really quickly on music interests. I think it was maybe the second text we sent to each other was like, "What are your favorite bands?" And she said her favorite band was Radiohead. And I, of course, love Radiohead too. So we were starting to just find common interest. But I just remember feeling very open to the experience because it was so exciting and new and fresh, and that was so important. And so we were acting like teenagers a little bit for a while there. I'd made the commitment to go out and see her, once we had our first date, and once we decided that this is something that we wanted to do. We were committed to at least trying to see each other monthly there for a while before she moved to New York.
Well, and also you have to realize that I was also coming out of a very unhealthy marriage where I realized very quickly after we got married that this really wasn't the person that I wanted to be married to. So I actually got divorced when I was pregnant with my youngest. And so I had two 4 year olds and a 1 year old when we met. I mean, also hopping into a new relationship for me would seem like the craziest thing. And all of a sudden, he walks into my life. And for the years that I was in my marriage that wasn't good, I always dreamed of someone like him. And then he just shows up, and then he comes to meet me, and he takes me on like the most special date ever, the most thought out date ever, which I always brag about.
We'll definitely have to go over that too. And it's very convenient too. You guys didn't have to do a dating site or anything or go through like the various serial dating and stuff. Like that's cool.
I know. I know. Well, and you're right. What a special thing to have happen where you didn't where I think either one of us didn't have to do a lot of searching and, guided. What else can you say other than something special happening in your life and just being open to and ready to receive it, really?
I have two quick questions. I'll just start with this first one because maybe it's too personal. You don't have to answer it. Are your exes still in both of your lives?
Who wants to go first?
So yeah, I'll go first. So my ex lives in Staten Island, so we're living in Staten Island, New York, currently. She lives in New York, and we share custody with the kids. And so there is connection from the kids, but not significantly a part of my life personally outside of the connection we have with the kids. Yeah.
So, in my case, there's not as much connection for the younger kids and their father. Ian's actually in the process of trying to adopt the younger kids, which we've all been really excited about. There was a little bit of connection with their dad when we first moved here. They went out to visit him for a few summers, but he's kind of got his own things going on and his own challenges and things to work through. So that's been kind of sad, but it's also been such a joy to have Ian really step up and be their father. I can remember a very specific thing that happened when we did finally move me here to New York. You know, my kids had seen my ex, and it was time for us to go, and he loaded up all three kids in the car, and we were driving to get ready to come back to New York. And I realized that Ian had just like really picked up that responsibility, like on that day, that he was gonna be the father of these three very young children, that he didn't really even know that well. And that was a really powerful moment. And so I've
Yeah, that was.
really, so that's one of the things
Yeah.
I've been so grateful for, because I know in a lot of divorces and things, maybe single moms don't meet someone who becomes the dad for their children. So I feel really blessed in that way for the whole family.
That's awesome. My other question, because you guys had mentioned a couple times that you guys had felt like teenagers, or at least at the beginning. Do you think that was like part of the honeymoon phase, or was that like a genuine, like, oh my God, I actually felt like I actually feel something strong for this person, or was it a mix of both?
I think it was a mix of both. It was an excitement in a relationship that is comparable to being a teenager,
Like the
right?
trips we took that we were able to take.
And there were some trips that we were able to take kind of early on in relation to either my work trips or her work trips. We were going to two places
Without the kids.
without the kids, and so it was an opportunity for us to build a relationship together. And I think that that's important, and we can probably get into this a little bit as the discussion goes by. But we've tried to still keep that kind of spirit alive. And so, for instance, we have quarterly, we try to do something at least 4 times a year where we get away without the kids, where we actually stay away and we allow ourselves to be, maybe a little crazier during that time. We're out in the hotel, we're, maybe drinking a little bit more than we normally would. We are having fun, maybe seeing a concert, being in the city, whatever the case may be, just trying to keep that kind of fresh together feeling and excitement.
Which is so important because, we're telling you all the perfect stuff, right? But I mean, the day to day of raising six kids is can be super stressful. He's been working from home for a year with the pandemic, with six kids in the house half the time. Like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies all the time.
There's a lot of
Um,
stepping on each other and stepping on each other's toes and a lot of, being in each other's space as a family together. And that's very enjoyable, but it can also be a little bit challenging at times too.
But that's really smart you guys do that. I mean, I've never been married. I don't have kids yet. But I do hear all the time that people, when they do start kind of falling out of love or they're thinking about divorce, if they do have kids, usually that seems to always be like, oh well, the kids like took all our time and we just didn't try as much with each other. So I mean, that is cool and inspiring for people to listen now, like, yeah, you guys are able to make the time with six children.
well, and we're also lucky because we both have our failed marriages that we learned from. So when we start to kind of fall back into things we might have done before, I think it's a little bit easier for us to keep each other in check. Like, are these emotions, are these fears or insecurities coming from something that is going on in our marriage? Or is this, something that came from our previous
Or just
marriages?
from us personally,
Yeah.
because everybody brings a lot to a relationship, right? You bring the good, you bring the bad, you maybe bring the ugly sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And well, Elena's helped me understand that a lot more too. You're very good at talking about emotion, at talking about feelings, of trying to help me understand like where are these feelings coming from? How are you feeling? Can you talk about how you're feeling? I just hadn't been previously very comfortable or really had the skills or knew how to talk about emotion or feeling. So that's been very
Mhm.
helpful.
And you've also brought into the relationship the ability for me to feel safe and secure, because I brought a lot of abandonment issues into the relationship. And so just knowing that we had really made this commitment together and making me feel safe, and able to feel vulnerable, which is be able to be vulnerable. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm just meeting you two for the first time. I love you two together.
thanks. Thanks. We've heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a fun time. It's been a good time together for sure.
No, it's definitely sounds like it. Which speaking of, what was this first date like?
Can I start?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I wanna tell you my perspective of, like, where we met, and then I wanna hear yours.
Okay.
So, I had gone on a couple dates because I was, divorced a little bit before him. They were fine guys, they were nice, but there just wasn't really the spark. So I feel like I was dating a little bit just so I could get a babysitter and get out of the house for a little while.
Which is
Which I
important.
mean, it was important, but, maybe not the best idea, you know? So, anyway, so the way we first met was his brother was getting married in Utah about a month after we started communicating. So he came out for his brother's wedding and he was like, "Okay, I'm going to plan a date. I'm going to be here at this time." And I was ridiculously nervous. I like tried on a gazillion different things of clothes. There were clothes all over the room. I didn't know what I was going to wear. So he showed up at my door. He came to pick me up and he knocked on the door and I opened the door and my nervousness just immediately went away. And he was really cute. He brought Lush bath bombs. I was like, "Oh wow, like no one is, flowers or maybe chocolates, all of the traditional things." I was like, "This is awesome. Like I'm momming these 3 kids by myself. I need to relax with some Lush bath bombs." So I was really impressed with that right away. So I invited him in and I wasn't even ready. So, because I had stressed out so much and he was just really patient. Like I was still doing my makeup and like, yeah, I just like wasn't prepared when he got there because I was so nervous. And so then maybe you can talk about our date.
Sure. Well, the interesting thing for me was she invited me in, and we'd been talking, we'd been texting a lot and talking on the phone, but we'd only known each other for about a month. And so I was also nervous. And she opened the door and she introduced herself and she brought me into her little apartment. And she said, "Sit down here and relax." And then she just climbed on my lap. It was like we'd known each other for a long time, and I felt great about it. And we it's Southern Utah. What do you do in Southern Utah? Not a lot, other than, well, there's a lot to do, but it's a lot of outdoor kind of recreational type activities, and the scenery and the landscape is beautiful. So we went on a hike and we um,
To your special
to a
area.
special area up a canyon, a hidden little place with a waterfall and some vegetation. It's the desert there. So when you get a little green, it makes everybody excited when you've got a little water around. And so we hiked and we just kind of got to know each other. And that was, that was a great time.
And he made sandwiches for us with the produce out of his dad's garden. And this place he took me was a place he'd been going since he was a child, so it was like a very special
Yeah.
place for him.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it it's a place with a great feeling for me personally, and having her there made it even better.
Oh, I loved being there.
My for listeners, because I'm single, my expectations are like like way up, like step up people.
Well,
Right,
so
well,
what
it's I mean, it's nice, for my perspective, it's nice to have activities or experiences that you have together as a couple that help to continue to bond you together. We've got a few stories. We have a few experiences. Some of them are fun. Some of them are challenging that we made it through together. That you draw on later when the day to day can be hectic and stressful, but you can draw on these experiences in order to feel comfortable in the relationship, or to draw on them to feel love and passion when needed. And it is great to have some of those things to draw on.
and that's one thing that I suggest to couples, when you're, in the middle of 3 kids being sick and, puking all over the house, just to be honest, and he has a deadline for work and I've committed myself to all of these things and frustrations arise. I think it's always good to make a list of why you fell in love with that person, how you felt on those first dates, and just to remind yourself sometimes and ground yourself in the relationship instead of getting too wrapped up in the day to day craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we definitely, whether you're in a relationship or not, I mean, a lot of us get really like kind of, I've said it in past episodes, we kind of get up on this hamster wheel sometimes with life and we don't even realize how fast life is going by and stuff. So, yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah, make time for, the genuine connections with other people.
Absolutely. And it was about a year from our first date to when we got engaged, right?
Yeah, things move pretty quickly for us.
And it was really great. He really did small things to make me feel loved from afar during that time. Like, I was spending way too much money at Starbucks at that time. So
Me
he
now.
like he sent me this little kit with this little whipper. What do you call that?
And I don't. It
It
makes the
like
bubbles. It
it
makes the
it
the foam.
it whips your drink.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the little foam whipper. And
That's right.
so I wouldn't have to spend so much money at Starbucks, which is really cute. Or occasionally he would send me tulips. My vacuum cleaner broke, and I just, you know, mentioned to him that there was this dirt all over my floor, but it was like really driving me crazy, and he sent me a vacuum cleaner. These aren't like the most romantic.
That's a keeper.
Right.
Both those things.
Yeah, he's a total keeper. And they like weren't romantic things, but they were so practical. And I really needed that at that time.
Yeah.
And oh, what did I send you? I sent you some cute things. The
Well,
cookies.
yeah, cookies and yeah, just ways to keep the dialogue going and ways to feel physical presence in a long distance relationship. For anybody that's been in a long distance relationship, that can be one of the hardest thing is just the feeling of physical proximity. We were on the phone a lot talking, and you get a lot from FaceTime. You do, but it's also nice to have things that you can interact with. So that physical proximity was important to us early on, for sure.
Yeah, I baked him cookies and I mailed them to his office and he shared them with his whole team.
Yeah, which is fun.
And at the time, I really want to impress him that I made the cookies all by myself, but my friend helped me. So later I was like, well, I didn't make them all by myself, but so that was really fun. And we shared some joys over the Little Prince book. I sent him a copy of The Little Prince, which is one of my favorite
Books.
books.
Yeah, which has been an important part of our relationship ever since.
So then I guess jump ahead a little bit to when we got engaged. Does that sound like a good thing to talk about?
Go, yeah. Before we do that, I did want to just ask one quick question. Just because some people think long distance is like hopeless almost. Like, did you have like any little pieces of advice for people that might feel that way?
So I was very firm with him. I said, if we're going to do this, if we're going to pursue this, I need to see you once a month in person, whether it's me coming to New York or you coming to Utah or us meeting at trade shows. So we did a little bit of that. I flew standby to New York a few times because I have JetBlue standby benefits. So that was really helpful. And yeah, I think you really have to see each other every 4 to 6 weeks to keep that physical connection alive.
Yeah, I mean that was important for her, and I think it was important for her to speak that to me, and we made it work. I don't think it at at some point can feel a little hopeless, and it can be a little bit hard. I mean, I remember the feelings of leaving her every time I was going to be going home or she was going to be going home. There was, it's separation. It can be rough. And also, so Elena let me know that we needed to see each other every month, and we worked that out. And then about, I would say about a year in, we just said that we want to move this forward, and the only way that we're going to be able to move this forward is if we just jump in and do it. Like, we're at a position now where we need to either make the commitment, we're going to kind of move in together, we're going to be together,
Move me across the
or
country.
or it's not going to work. And so that was really kind of what then prepared us for that next kind of phase of our relationship and the push forward. I mean, at the time, I think we could have very easily found reasons why this relationship should not work, right?
Mhm.
I was still going through a divorce. We had the children. The children hadn't actually met.
Yeah.
We were long distance. We were,
And
her,
there were even financial constraints, right? Like you were going through the divorce.
yeah.
Um, I was about to lose my job. You would think we were really, really crazy, and we were really crazy. I mean, who moves me across the country? I'm right about to lose my job. His divorce isn't finalized yet. You know, we're getting apart, trying to find apartments in New York City where they will accept 6 kids. I mean, that's unheard of, you know? Figuring out what I was going to do when I was going to get here. I mean, it was, I mean, we were crazy.
Yeah.
That definitely an uphill battle. That's definitely a lot of No, but you guys, yeah, I mean, it obviously was worth it for both of you guys made it work, right?
Oh, and I think a lot of people thought we were really crazy. His family was very supportive, but his mom later told me as she watched us drive out of town that she just was thinking, "Oh my gosh, I hope this works. I hope this works." And then my dad was very skeptical because, you know, his divorce wasn't finalized yet and he's from the South. And I think he was like, "Are you really going to marry my daughter? Like, what is going on here?" And, but yes, of course, his intentions were always
Pure.
good.
Good. Yeah.
And, you know, I had a couple friends that I was like, "Oh, I'm moving to New York." And when I actually moved, they were like, "Oh, we didn't think that was actually going to happen." I'm like, "Thanks, guys."
I mean, yeah, I think, listening to loved ones, friends, and family members and stuff, I think it is important, but at the same time, like, definitely your gut feeling should be one of the first things, in my opinion, to really, because the relationship at the end of the day is you two and your children. Like that's the main household, and what everyone else says, like, yes, it can be important, but at the same time, if they were all against it and you guys ended up listening to them and didn't work out, like you guys would be missing what you have now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think your intuition and following your heart is for the best. And that was even more scary after what we had been through in our previous marriages.
As long as there's no, because I just want to warrant, as long as there's no severe red flags, because I know in other cases sometimes that's a thing, and some people can maybe see that more than the people involved, but that's not the case here. Yeah, so you guys were gonna get into your engagement.
So we were getting ready. We had plans that Elena was going to move to New York, but I very much wanted her to know that I was committed to the relationship and wanted to move it forward towards us getting married. And so I planned a trip for us to San Francisco, and we stayed a night in San Francisco and then drove north into wine country, into a very little tiny place called Casadero, which is actually right along the coast there, where all of the coastal redwoods are. It was, I mean, we both still just have the fondest feelings for Northern California and the beauty, the majestic beauty of the land and the trees and everything. She told me her favorite wine was this wine company called Flowers Wine. And she told me this one time, and I remembered it, and I looked it up, and I saw that it was right outside of this little town called Casadero. And so I called the place and I said, I would like to come here and I'd like to propose to my girlfriend. Would
But
it be possible for me to come to the winery and propose in, amongst the vines on the property?
but he had never actually bought a bottle of wine from them. So the lady was like,
Yeah, it was funny. It's a very small little place, and she said, "This is the family's property. We don't actually, normally have this open to the public." And so I just kept after her, this poor woman named
he
Michelle.
harassed her.
I asked several times in different ways, and finally ended up buying some wine, so they knew I was fully committed. And
She gave you that one weekend. She was like, "This is the only time you guys can come."
yeah, so she said, essentially the family's not going to be here at this time. We do have some capacity. You can come like on this Saturday or Sunday, within these times. And I said, okay, we'll do it.
It was like a 2-hour window. She was like, get here within 2 weeks. You got 2 hours. And I didn't know any of this. I thought maybe we were getting engaged because he told me to bring a special dress. But I wasn't totally sure because, you can wear a special dress to dinner or anything. And that morning we woke up and he's like, I have a surprise today. And he had a picnic basket and he was like putting stuff in it.
Nervous, a little fidgety, she could tell.
He was nervous, but I still wasn't sure. And so then we were driving up to the winery and I reached over to hold his hand and his palm was like sweating like crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the day. This is the day. So, but I still don't know where we're going. So we get there, we like go through these big gates and I see like an F, but I'm not sure what it is. And then we pulled in and I see that it's flowers and Michelle set it up so cute. There was like a little
Shout out
sign
to
that said,
Michelle.
"Welcome, Ian."
That's
Yes.
right.
We'll make sure Michelle hears this. Michelle at Flowers Winery is amazing. And it worked out, Michelle. So she set up this beautiful tasting for us. And as we were there, she told us the story about the grapes. And we started to realize that the story about how they grew the grapes kind of mimicked our relationship. Can you?
Yeah, she essentially said that when they were starting, fairly, there was a long time, a long history at the winery, but when they were very first starting, they were essentially told that the soil was too rocky and it was too, I guess, hilly, and there were some conditions within the soil that would make it very hard in order for these grapes to grow and to produce the kind of quality of grapes or the wine or significant quantity for making the wine. But they went forward anyway. And in that section in Northern California, what you get is the fog coming off the ocean in the mornings, and it rolls through over the kind of the hillsides. And apparently, given those conditions, it was actually the perfect place to have grapes and vines because of that wetness in the early morning fog. So anyway, we kind of felt like that was a little bit like our relationship. The conditions were rocky, lots going on. Maybe the relationship could, others could see, or maybe that they were concerned that it wouldn't be the conditions for setting forth a relationship. But it ended up being the perfect environment. It ended up being the perfect conditions for our relationship and us moving forward together in life. And so, Michelle, after we had some wine and had some and visited for a while, she took us out back, and there was this beautiful, just one big old tree, and she took us out there and she said, okay, I'm going to leave you out here for a minute so you can enjoy the scene, and the grapes were down below us. And I got down on my knee and I told her that I would always pay attention. That was on my mind because she had only told me about Flowers Winery one time before. And
Oh yeah, he knocked it out of the park,
and
Frank.
I just knelt down and said, I'll always pay attention, and will you marry me? And she said yes. And it just was perfect.
It was
in every way.
absolutely perfect. And he took it even farther by every year on that anniversary, he gives me a bottle of the grapes that were growing while we were there.
So we've got now a pretty good library of that vintage of that wine from the grapes that were growing while we were there. So we celebrate our anniversary by drinking wine from the grapes that were there while I was proposing to her, which is kind of fun.
I'm not crying. We touched on a lot of like positive stories and stuff. I am curious because you guys had mentioned there was obviously some challenges along the way. Can you talk about one of those situations?
Absolutely. So when we first moved here, the kids had met maybe twice, but they hadn't been able to spend a lot of time together. And at that time, all the kids were really young. How old were all the kids when I moved here?
The youngest was 2. The
Boys
so
were
5, 7 and 9, I guess, 9 or 10. So young.
So having that many young children at once was definitely a challenge. Anytime you're blending families, there's usually jealousy issues between the families, like who's getting this, who's getting what,
Attention.
attention. So that was really difficult for a while. I think it's taken 4 or 5 years for everyone to kind of mesh together. Plus, we had 6 different kids and like 4 different schools at one point. So we were running all over Staten Island, getting these kids here and these kids there. And at that time, they needed more help with their homework than they did now. It was like a I don't am I allowed to say the
Yeah,
S
you can.
word?
Fuck yeah, you can swear.
Okay. It was like there were times when it was a complete shit show. So that was really challenging. Also, because he wasn't fully divorced yet, there were a lot of challenges with his ex. And
And just wrapping up divorce, and the some of the financial consequences that come after divorce were also challenging. And so it was a kind of a swirl of activity, as she mentioned. So we were all very busy just making sure that the family was doing what the family needed to be done. But then there were outside pressures too that were challenging, financial commitments and financial challenges, just the kind of general emotional challenges of trying to bring a lot of people together in a household. I would say that those are the main things that we experienced early on, and frankly, still do to some extent. I mean, some of that has died down a little bit. There's a lot of activity when you have 8 people in your house.
a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe I'll just mention one other thing too that because you asked for maybe one specific kind of hard thing that we went through. So I grew up member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, and Elena had been baptized into the church, converted later on in her life. And then when we met, we were kind of both practicing in the church, and my family's all very strong, and I have a lot of wonderful things to say about the religion and the all of the people that are Mormons. But for us early on, when Elena moved here, we moved in together. And at the time, I was still finishing up my divorce. We weren't married, which goes against the practicings and the teachings of the church. Because of the divorce, the things that growing up a member of the church, I had identified myself as a father first, as a husband first, and as a father second. And so the divorce had really taken a toll on some of my like self-esteem and
Your
confidence,
spiritual
my
practice.
spiritual practice. And moving together, that was also a challenge in the church's eyes as well. And
Yeah, we were told that we should not be together. We should not be living together. And we were already questioning our faith before all of this happened. And we did end up not, I mean, we're still members of the church, but we're not practicing anymore, just because of a variety of reasons. But that was really hard coming and finding that our support system was like, you guys shouldn't do this.
and certainly wanting to support, but to support in a way that at the time we felt very strongly within ourselves was not the direction that we needed to go in. And so it also then took quite a bit of courage, I think, from both of our parts to say, actually, this isn't helpful for us right now, and so we need to do something different. And we've got a lot of people now depending on us, and so let's figure out the best way for us to move forward. And that certainly was us being together. It was certainly us living together. It was certainly us supporting each other, and that decision was, I think, also very important early on in our relationship to kind of bring us where we are now.
Yeah, no, that sounds tough, and yet another challenge for you guys to overcome.
We were actually told by a religious leader that we should move out from each other and like not see each other basically at all or offer any support to each other until he was fully divorced. And his divorce didn't go through until 2 years after I moved here.
Yeah, it takes time in New York,
Yeah.
on occasion, right? It sometimes just takes time. Things can be complicated, so and but even that length of time was
That was also
a
a
challenge.
challenge because, you know, we were ready to get married. We really wanted to be married.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was yet another challenge. Caused a few fights, like, "Why is your divorce taking so long?" Like, when can we get married? And of course, his family being religious really wanted us married too, so
I won't throw the book question at you guys, but I do want to slide in because I'm just curious because obviously you guys had to overcome a lot. So whether this was for yourselves or within the relationship for each of you, what's one of the most important lessons you guys have learned?
I think I've learned, or I know I've learned, that we each bring our baggage into the relationship, and that it's each of our responsibilities to work on ourselves and love ourselves first so we can show up for each other and for the rest of the family. I think that's really, really important. Your own mental health, self-love, knowing who you are, being able to be vulnerable with your partner. I think that's one of the most important things for me.
Yeah, and really for me, I would echo all of that, and she taught me a lot of that too. Because she would ask me actually quite a bit. I said earlier, do you want to talk about it? Can you talk about it? Talk to me about it. But then she was also reminding me, you need to you need to put in some work here. You need to be thinking about this and working on this. And I'm your wife, but I'm not your therapist. So you need to be getting help where you need to get help. If that's helping you to be physically healthy, emotionally healthy, those are things that you also need to be working, thinking about, and making sure that I understand that. But I was going to mention, one of the things that I've found is so important are the small kind of rituals that you do together, things that just take place all the time. We have our youngest daughter, Marley, who all through coronavirus and the pandemic has been insistent that on Fridays we have a dance party. And so last night we turn on pretty aggressive punk rock music because that's what it seems like
That's
we
what she
like to
likes.
dance to the most, and she likes to dance to the most. And we dance to Wire and all of the great, The Damned, and and we dance around the house. So that's a ritual. Elena and I go to a local vegan restaurant. We try to make it there every other Friday, and last night was our date night to go and eat dinner together. And that's another ritual. Things can be spiritual rituals, they can just be kind of time rituals, they can be kind of loving rituals. But I think all of those things are very important to make sure that you're having opportunity to communicate, just to talk, and they're easy because they're things you're doing regularly. It's easy to just remember that it's dance party on Friday night.
Or when we moved into our new house, I had this custom, is it 10 feet?
Yeah.
10-foot table made so we can actually all sit down and eat together. I think that's really, really important. But my favorite ritual is that every morning he will bring me my drink of choice, whether it's like hot lemon water or, black tea with oat milk. Almost every morning he brings that to me in bed, and I feel really loved.
I
So
will.
if he misses it, I'm like,
Why, why don't, where is my drink?
I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't get my drink today."
Is something the matter?
I'm sorry, I have to add another question. I gotta sneak one in there again because you guys were, or at least Ian had mentioned, how Elena, you had told him certain things and about him that he might have to work on or change or whatever. I feel like for the human being, like ego can get really strong. When you guys were telling each other maybe certain things, like how did you guys take that initially?
So very interesting. really early on in the relationship, we were talking about she was dating when she was in Utah, and I was just so thrilled to meet her and to be talking to her that I very early on made a decision that I really had no control. Like if this was going to happen, it was just going to blossom and move forward. I let her kind of do her thing, and we were still kind of doing our thing together, but I took it I essentially, maybe what I'm trying to say is it was kind of a humbling experience for me. And so right from the beginning, it was easy for me to listen to her because that was the mindset that I'd put myself into. I wasn't bringing, I guess, my ego or, my sense of like I'm going to demand this, or this is the way that I am and why aren't you kind of conforming to my thoughts about the way that you should be. I was coming into it in a very humble place, maybe because what had just been kind of going through with my own divorce and the kind of the dissolution of that first marriage. And I was coming into it with kind of an openness towards her that I think was helpful in taking those suggestions and those thoughts on, or even just accepting her and what she was doing, kind of in totality, who she was, what she was doing for work, the kids, her life, her lifestyle, etc.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like sometimes that's the killer when if two people are so adamant about like there's nothing wrong with me. What are you talking about? Like you can't tell me what you see in me or something. Like I don't see that. Like sometimes yeah, that really can mess up a relationship. So I mean that I think is really awesome that you guys were able to have that open communication. It's so important.
Yeah, it's definitely important. And we've gone through waves where we've been really good at it, and sometimes we've been really bad at it, but that's just life. And this is the longest relationship I've ever been in. So, like, I still have these like moments. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? We've been together this long. My relationships were always really short. So sometimes I get a little panicked about that. Like, what happens in this next phase of our life, or what's I try to think of it as seasons, so we're in different seasons of our life. So when you have young kids, as a mom, you're in that season of doing everything for them, and then they start to get a little bit older, and that's a different season. Or he's in the season of his work where it's like completely stressful and it's like the main part of his career. And so I think of things in seasons, and that has been really helpful as well.
Yeah, that's definitely important too, because oh my god, yeah, when one or both of you are in that stressful situation and the communication just like goes downhill, it's like almost like speaking without thinking type thing and not knowing how to communicate. And
Yeah, that happens.
How do you feel like I've responded to some of your constructive
oh,
criticism?
she's
Because
putting
I
you on the
can't think of
spot.
it right now.
Oh, I know. No, I mean, I think you're better. She can be a little bit stubborn of certain things, but I feel like overall I'm a bit more kind of stubborn overall.
We're both stubborn.
No, you've been very good. Like I don't. This is the best answer. I just don't have much to say. She's wonderful in every way. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's helpful. She's emotionally available. She's caring. She's loving. I'd even written in my notes, the little note app the other day, that we were doing something around the house, and I was feeling frustrated because it was like the end of a Saturday, and I'd been in the yard working for a while, and I was downstairs and trying to clean off, and I was dirty. And a thought just occurred to me that during the day, Elena had been kind of showing me love in kind of small ways, just being outside, talking to me, a little pat on the booty every once in a while. But the thought occurred to me, you need to be recognizing this because this is the way she's caring for me, and this is her femininity, as she likes to provide to me. And so I need to be watching for these things and appreciating them, because that's actually how she's caring for me. And she's not digging holes, planting flowers like me in the flower bed, but she's there with me. She's giving me care and attention, and that's great. And I'm so blessed because of it. And those small acts are wonderful.
Well, and in the dynamics of our relationship, he's the primary provider. I mean, my income goes more to our fun things and our vacations, but he like handles the legit stuff, right? So I sometimes feel like the things that I do are more unseen than the things that he does. So I feel really appreciated when you tell me these things, because tucking kids in at night or dealing with a child's bad day at school, those things just aren't seen. I mean, we see him at his computer every day working hard, but everyone doesn't always see what I do. So I really appreciate you noticing those things.
No, that definitely is important. And trust me, 6 kids and fun things, that's legit. I promise.
Well, well,
Right.
no, we recently flew to Utah and our daughter's friend also came. So it was 9 of us. And I mean, can you just think
My kids
about
wouldn't have
like
any
the
friends.
cost, like the cost of flying 9, well, we only paid for 8, flying 8 kids to Utah and back. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, I'm glad we get to do those fun
No, it's
things.
awesome. Yeah, is there any social media links or any kind of things you want to promote or anything you guys want us to follow you guys on?
So, I don't have a Instagram yet for what I'm working with my business, which is called Desire Arts, but I do have my personal Instagram if anyone wants to follow it. It's Laney, Lanie, and ANN Ras is my Instagram. And also, this is so nerdy, but we just started a TikTok for our tortoise. And I guess the name, I'm not like, like I'm in my 30s, I'm not TikTok savvy, but it's called Fancy Tortoise. And we are going to document the life of our tortoise. And so if anyone wants to follow that, they can, but don't judge us because there's only one video up right
That
now.
shocked me. I thought you were going to say like a family TikTok.
Yeah.
We were gonna do a family TikTok, but it just seemed kind of all over the place. And then, having older kids, like they might not always want their stuff posted on TikTok. I mean, they all have their own TikToks, but we want to respect their privacy. But our tortoise has fully consented to being on the TikTok. So so I guess that's about it as far
Yeah.
as anything like that.
Awesome. Hey, Past Frank here, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you subscribe to stay updated on new episodes, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and if you'd like to become a producer or make a one-time donation to the show, click on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. I want to give a special thanks to my executive producer, Monica Leigh, and producers Jennifer Herrera, Alexa Hunt, Stephanie Lindsay, Kas Nolan, and Rebecca Russo. I also want to thank each and every one of you for listening and watching the show. Have a super special, awesome day, and bye.